Our final panel for the day is on tests, scores, and beyond. For this, I would like to again call upon Ashok to moderate this panel. Over to you, Ashok.
So as usual, I pick up the graveyard shift after lunch, but we'll try to do a more interactive uh, panel because this is something that we normally don't want to talk about. We are very happy when I.A.S says that 70% proficiency in math, as the I.A.S says, and on the other hand, we put our hands on our heads when we see Asar saying 18%. So we don't know what's true, right? Whether it's 18 or whether it's 70. We assume somewhere in between this range there is a sweet spot. But I think more than that, we don't know whether students and children are actually learning. And that's why I think it's important for us to understand, how children learn and what can we learn from it. And one of my fondest dreams has always been, if we know enough about what children and how children learn, can we put that learning into our teacher training curriculum on a continuous basis? So, their learning gets accelerated over time. Today we've been fortunate, we have three extremely gifted people in this area. First one, Vyjayanthi Sankar, who runs the center, who's a founder and runs the Center for the Science of Student Learning. Have I got that right, Vyjayanthi? Student learning, right? She's a Fulbright fellow, Ashoka fellow, all the accolades you want, she's got them. All the committees you want, she's got them. So I'm not going to go through any of the resumes, so to speak. But Vyjayanthi, can you come up, please? I first met her a few years ago, and I was marveling at her passion for understanding how children learn. And, a lot of it will be related to math, but I'm sure she'll talk about allied areas as well. The second person, Pranav, could not be here. Unfortunately, at an offsite yesterday, he was a little more excited and sprained his ankle. So early morning, he woke me up saying, what do I do? I said, if you can't come, you got to send somebody. And so he sent Jayanti Dasgupta, who heads customer satisfaction at educational initiatives. All of us in this room in the education space would know EI. Jayanti, welcome. While Pranav broke his ankle, she's lost her voice a little bit. But we have technology to take care of that in the form of a microphone. So Jayanti studied at IIT Delhi, has been a teacher, and that's how she likes to be called, as a teacher. And here she is as manager of customer satisfaction. So we have lots of kids to satisfy. Last but not the least, I have a friend from Odisha, Tapas Bhai. Dr. Tapas Naik is part of the Odisha government. He has a PhD from Utkal University. And if you think crossing Hebbal flyover was difficult, these guys had a 4-hour wait in Bhubaneswar airport because of a fog. So, so they were delayed yesterday and all that. So anyway, so we have our panel here, and I will start this immediately. If I may sit. Okay, so I think our traditional methods of measuring, if you go to even, whether you go to a school or you write the IIT joint entrance exam, it's MCQs, right? Which means it's a matka process. You don't know whether you've learned it, but and children at the higher education levels, they probably end up looking up 10 years papers or whatever, and a good visual memory of this whole thing, and then they're able to crack it. So rather than being limited to finite worksheets or multiple choice questions only, can we have diverse ways of approaching and asking questions? So this is one principle that we may want to look at, so that it allows us to address not only major misconceptions, but common sticking points and different reading levels as well. Okay, so that's one. The second, I think, is what they call blocked practice or drilling. You do the same thing over and over again, as opposed to an interleaved practice. So can we think about that? The format I'd like to use for this session is for each of you to spend a few minutes talking about your work and how it can relate to. We want to think Greenfield beyond just what we've been doing years and years in this country, and see how we can change the paradigm of testing. And if you can take 6, 7, 8 minutes each, then we have something that, and I think the audience needs to be very participative in this process, because this is not sharing our experience only. This is about us thinking along with you. So if you can start with that, Vyjayanthi, would you take the lead? About your work and
Okay.
and what we talked about, various dimensions that you looked at.
Yeah. So thanks, Ashok. Thanks for inviting me here. I think I attended one of your Akshara programs way back, maybe 7, 8 years back. But glad to be here and see the work that you guys are doing. So I'm from Center for Science of Student Learning. So about 20 plus years of experience in building assessments for this country, and that too at scale. In terms of, so one of the points that he gave us an introduction is that where you only use MCQs and therefore children are able to rote learn and do it. But my experience has been that the issue is not about MCQs, it's the way the MCQs have been built, right? A good MCQ will be very, very difficult to crack unless you actually know the answer. And understand the answer. A good MCQ you cannot answer it by eliminating the wrong options, right? So those types of issues. I think assessment capacity is very much an area that we work on. We work with many governments like Tamil Nadu government, Rajasthan government, with Andhra Pradesh government, etc., where we set up assessment cell. We train them that how do you build assessment items which actually lead you to learning, where wrong answer is more important than the right answer, right? Mostly MCQs are built for right answer is important. That is where the issue is. But a good MCQ would have wrong answer is more important than the right answer. And at the analysis front, I have seen that these give more insights than a long form question. But anyway, there are definitely different questions that you can use apart from MCQs if you're looking at other skills as well. So we will talk about that a bit later. But I wanted to talk about some of the larger things that are at play here, right? So one of the things that we did way back is that, like, if you teach a child about math and you test him in the month of March, and again you test the same children with the same paper in the month of June, right? How would you expect the scores to be? Any answers? Huh? Better? Lower? Okay, so summer slide. Okay, so I would say go with lower. Okay, but when you say lower, then because it's the same paper, right? And in a paper, a well-built paper would have questions which are checking for procedure and will also check for things which are looking for the conceptual knowledge. Okay, so we went and looked at, okay, children are performing lower. So where are they performing lower? On what type of questions are they performing lower? Again, any guess? Procedural. You're right? Because process and procedure is something that you would tend to remember only, it stays in it doesn't get transferred or internalized, right? And where is something that you have learned conceptually? Like, for example, the minute you say that this is your square and you tilt a square, and you start to learn a square based on its properties, that 4 sides are equal, 4 angles are equal. So you can recognize a square in any orientation, right? Once that happens, you never will forget it. Whereas when you see a square always in its upright orientation, and because you have a rote mental model of that, you would tend to forget it, right? So which is exactly what happened. So I think the fundamental thing that you're all bang on is that most of the learning that happens in our country is rote. So it's very superficial. So for the example, when you say 23 into 3, if 80% of students can do it, the same question, same paper, same children, you ask, what is 23 times 3? You will find that the performance goes down to 40%, right? And if you say that, if I say that I give you a watermelon and you have to get half a watermelon, and let us say that 70% of kids are doing, but in the same paper I ask a question where I draw different figures, cut into half, 3/4, 1/4, etc., and ask them to identify which is the half. You would find 70% of kids who could do the first question, only 18% can do it. That means they have understood that half means 2 parts, but they have not understood that the parts have to be equal, right? So a good, well-developed assessment will give you these types of insights. So therefore, first and fundamental, rote learning, because all the learning is so superficial. Second issue is that we would also say that teachers have the same misconceptions that students have. We just completed a large-scale assessment of 120,000 teachers, all the teachers in Jharkhand, on testing them on subject knowledge, pedagogical competence, and all that through actual paper pencil test. Of course, they took it in mobile phones. But you will find that children, the same misconceptions teachers have are the same misconceptions students have, right? And second is that teachers also not only have misconceptions, they don't even understand the concept well, but they may also follow some wrong pedagogy. For example, you take a question where you say 3 tens plus 7 ones, and children are answering 37. I say 7 ones plus 3 tens. Now the answer will be 73, right? Because the teacher teaches first number first, second number second. And always they will give the same way questions, because it's a very mark-oriented culture, right? And as a mark-oriented culture, the culture is focused only on training something, testing for the same trained thing, and not for what was learned. So that's what we call as you test for what you taught, but you are not testing for what was learned, right? If you are testing for what was learned, obviously you will do different things. Okay. Then the third thing all of you will probably know is that as class level increases, max performance decreases. All of you know that. Boys will do better than girls, especially as the class level increases. Private schools will do better than government schools. These are all the things that you know. And I think for the last 20 plus years, I think I know Ashok for 15 years now, something 15 plus, I would say, working very hard on these areas, FLN areas and so on. And you will find that the needle sometimes looks like it has moved, but then it slides back, right? It looks like equilibrium has been disturbed, but very quickly it settles into equilibrium. It's like when you are trying to do a program for weight loss, no? So you know how it is, right? So it looks like it's sliding. Oh, you're happy, Acha, it's come down by 1 kg. And then it just plateaus. And then after that, one ice cream, it just goes back, right? So it's exactly like that is happening. I think fundamentally what we have been doing in CSSL, Center for Science of Student Learning, is that we think that when learning happens, there is much more than just the academic teaching learning process. There is much more that is going on in the academic learning process. Of course, I could talk about how children are learning misconceptions and so on, but I'm not touching on that aspect. But I think that in science of learning, what we realize is that if 2 children are tested, right? You would say, let us say one is scoring well and the other is not, and both belong to your same class. And if asked why one child is learning better, you would come up with answers like saying, no, he's coming from a better family. He's having better resources. You know, all of those things. But what if 2 children are coming from the same family, same parents, same resources, same schools, probably even identical twins, even their DNA is very, very similar, right? But one is doing math, the other wants to play flute, right? So why does that happen? You are the same teacher, right? So obviously there is something much more that is going on. So that is what we have been researching on as well in the last 5 years. So we did this large study called as the Cognitive and Affective Skills Study, where 3 states participated, and from the 5 metro cities, the top private schools participated. In the 3 states, the government schools participated. In the middle segment, we wanted to test the budget private, but we didn't have the budget. So we thought, okay, let's do the top private schools and the government schools. in this study, we actually came up with a model where we said that the social emotional skills of the child, the positive attitude the child has, the school climate that exists, and of course the learning outcomes, all these four have to go hand in hand for the academic and psychological well-being of the child. And then we started into figuring out, what do you mean by social emotional learning? NEP talks about it, SDGs talk about it, but what is the social emotional learning? So we had to do a lot of research to just understand what social emotional skills are. So broadly, I would say emotionally, you would say that emotional concept attainment, emotional regulation, behavior regulation, affect regulation, and so on, relationship skills. And in attitudes, we looked at things like attitude towards self, attitude towards your immediate others, like the teacher, the parent, and the peer. Then attitude towards school activities and subjects. So I'll share a bit about what attitude children have towards maths, okay? And then attitude towards other things like what we call as social objects, like gender, inclusivity, and civic sense and citizenship, etc. The interesting part is that the attitude tool collected data from teachers, students, as well as parents. Parents were called to school to write the test, okay, across the country. And the third aspect of the study was school climate. So in school climate, again, we looked at not only infrastructure and resources, that this is what people think is a school. But in reality, a school is nothing but relationships. So we looked at relationships in school. The teacher to the teacher, the teacher to the student, the teacher to the principal, parent to the teacher, and all of that stuff. We looked at the entire aspect of school climate, what goes beyond just infrastructure and resources, and to see what or how it influences the max score and the language scores. Okay? And of course, we had a test where we tested them on the language and as well as max proficiency. So what the study showed us, the study was just released in December, just last month. The reports are in public domain. There are 6 reports, totaling to something like 1,000 pages, but I have the executive summary here, which is just only the findings, 2-line findings, okay? And this is from all the 4, this is just 60 pages or less, okay? But of course, those who want to go deeper into understanding each of those aspects can dig into our full-length report. Now, what does this show? This shows that 16% of the scores are influenced by social emotional learning. 16% of variation in scores is due to the ability of the child to understand his emotions and others' emotions, have relationship skills, be able to control his behavior and stuff like that, right? Self-efficacy, when you look at the attitude tool, and if you look at self-efficacy, it will show that self-efficacy in mathematics, of course, decreases with age. This is something that you can understand. But what is the value that the child attributes to studying mathematics? Okay? You will find when you say value, we say that there is an extrinsic value and there is an intrinsic value. An extrinsic value is like if you are doing maths, you appear smart, you are appearing knowledgeable. So people will recognize you more, you become more popular, you become the pet of the teacher, things like that. Or intrinsic value is you really enjoy doing math. Okay? So here we found that in government schools, children had more of extrinsic value. Whereas in private schools, the top private schools, children had more of intrinsic value. And obviously, children who have intrinsic value performed better in mathematics compared to children who had extrinsic value. Then when we looked at what we call as the perspective, there's something called as a relational perspective and an instrumental perspective. Now, what is a relational perspective means? It's easy for me to do math. That is a relational perspective, okay? Whereas an instrumental perspective would be that it is easy to do because it's all formulas and algorithms. It's not difficult to study like a science or a language, okay? So again, you will find that people who, and when you say easy to do math is because I understand the concepts, okay? In relational means I can relate to it, I understand the concepts. Instrumental means I can just operate it, right? Now, children obviously who has a relational perspective will do better than children who have instrumental perspective. And again, children in private schools who had relational perspectives were performing better. They were enjoying their math, they were able to relate to the math, and so on. So all this directly takes you to the fact that the child who has a fear for math is not going to be learning math, right? And the other thing we also found was that there is something called growth mindset, which you all know. Growth mindset means that I can learn and I can become intelligent. The opposite of that is that I can learn, but I cannot become intelligent. Or I cannot learn and I cannot become intelligent. Any one of these narratives, right? And you will know that in government schools, 50% of the kids from grade 4 upwards think that they cannot learn and they cannot become intelligent. That's data from multiple states that we work on, right? That therefore, if you're working with a 3rd standard child or a 4th standard child, even before he comes to your class, half the game is gone, right? So growth mindset. So children who have growth mindset, when we run the regressions, we will know that those who have growth mindset would tend to do better in math, okay? And the more interesting part is that those who enjoy reading do well in math, okay? Those who enjoy reading for their personal enjoyment, again, not to become popular, not to become look up here, knowledgeable, etc. Those who really appreciate and enjoy reading also like math, you know, or do well in math. So therefore, the point I'm making here is that assessments are important, of course, to give you feedback and so on, but assessments of just the academic knowledge alone is not necessarily always going to solve it. You may need to look, there may be many more layers that are there. You know, and our school's climate study also showed that better school climate, that is those who have, and especially in mathematics and language, what we found was that in language, if students felt that the school had better school environment, that is resources, they were doing well. But when it comes to mathematics, those who did well in maths are those kids who felt that they had better relationships in school, right? So again, even between subjects, there is this difference. So better relationships in school, better classroom climate, pro-social climate, better attitude, all of these, you know, are their own, you know, concept of self-efficacy and so on and so forth. Values. Academic knowledge alone is not necessarily always going to solve it. You may need to look, there may be many more layers that are there. You know, and our school's climate study also showed that better school climate, that is those who have, and especially in mathematics and language, what we found was that in language, if students felt that the school had better school environment, that is resources, they were doing well. But when it comes to mathematics, those who did well in maths are those kids who felt that they had better relationships in school, right? So again, even between subjects, there is this difference. So better relationships in school, better classroom climate, pro-social climate, better attitude, all of these, you know, are their own, you know, concept of self-efficacy and so on and so forth, value systems. All this would also contribute. So while we are chirping away in the last 20 years on 2+2, or, you know, this is there, or this is how you do the measurement and all of that stuff, there is a whole lot we are not addressing at all. And unless you address that, you are not really going to get a change, and needle will move and it will slide back.
Thanks. Thank you, Vyjayanthi. There's a lot of new variables you've thrown into the ring now.
Thank you. Yeah, Ashok, pardon me for my voice, but I'll try to be a little louder for next 5 minutes. I think Vyjayanthi has put forward another aspect of learning. I, being a maths teacher for 16 years, I also thought in MCQ, one is the right answer and other 3 are wrong answers. Before I joined EI, and I understood that one is the right answer and other 3 are distractors or misconceptions. They help us to come to the understanding that students have about a concept. For almost 20, 21 years, we have been working in terms of assessment, diagnostic assessment, formative assessments, and learning, that how students learn. Do they learn by answering, especially mathematics? Do students learn by answering questions? Do students learn by listening to a lecture from a teacher? Do students learn by doing? Or is it combination of everything together, right? And what is a better way of knowing when we see the data at the back end? When every day more than 2 million students log into MindSpark and do MindSpark, and we see their learning journeys. They're fascinating, absolutely fascinating. It can be a government school in, Churu district in Rajasthan, or it could be the most elite school in South Africa or India. But the patterns of learning are very similar. I think what Ashok said is very, very interesting. Is block practice versus something called interleaf practice. When we have class tests, children normally do good. But when we have final exams, the performance dips. And if we give a child grade 12th exam and say, go home and aram se karke aana, we are sure that the performance would increase. Because children think once when they are practicing and does 5 times. That is block practice. But for interleaf practice, for every question, you need to think, apply, think, do, think and do. And since we are not training students for doing this, because we have worksheets, it doesn't happen. It has to be trained. And the one is assessment. What next? What after assessment? If we can give very structured feedback to all the stakeholders, first teacher, that what is that student? Now, let me start with grade 1-2 maths itself. There is a cohort of students who got 7 out of 10 accuracy. If we stop our understanding with accuracy, there could be one group of students who got 7 out of 10 with fluency. There could be another cohort of students who got 7 out of 10 without fluency. Now, this lack of fluency, will it hinder that child's further learning? Will it put a cognitive load on the child when the child has to do maybe a carryover? And that's why when Vyjayanthi is saying that as age grows, children's interest in mathematics reduces because complexity increases. And we have seen this happening again and again. Data shows multiple amounts of data, irrespective of the background they are coming from. So now, what should a teacher do? If we give a very specific, actionable feedback to a teacher, telling that accuracy was both the cohort has same accuracy, but why don't you focus on fluency? Or we say that children have the 7 out of 10 is the average of your class or average of your school. But these are the areas which children have specific misconceptions, address them, and these are the concepts which children have never understood. Teach them differently. This is one aspect. Second aspect, and I've seen this, student agency. Help children to reflect on their own learning. It may seem a big word or it may seem jargon, right, for us. But I have seen children, school children, sitting and reflecting on why they made a mistake, if they have made a mistake. And I think that's half battle won. If children reflect on their own learning, then that same test, if you give after even 3 months, if not the score may dip. Again, we have seen through multiple data points that fraction question asked in 4th, accuracy is higher. Same fraction question asked in 5th, accuracy dips. In 6th, when you're actively teaching, again, accuracy increases. Same question, right? But how do we still reinforce by giving very structured feedback to the teacher, to the student? And the second question which Ashok had is, in fact, after COVID, we started last 2.5 years, we have been thinking, why one question and one answer? What happens between a question and an answer? What is the thinking that students go through when they're answering? What is the process they go through? If we capture the process of answering question, if we can engage students by giving middle open questions, where there could be more than one way of solving a question, and let them explore, I think that interest rate, that engagement, collaboration increases while answering a question. I think even using technology to scale, if we have technologically advanced open-ended question, middle open question, it has an answer. It's starting with the same problem. But there are more than one ways to solve it, and if children collaboratively solve it. And I truly agree that students from privileged background to government background or a school in remote area of the country, if we give a procedural question, they may not do it good, and we have seen this. But if you give a question that is required for them to think and respond, I don't think there's a lot of variation in which they respond. So through various, like we have asset question a day, which is there on CBSE website, where one question comes every day, free to every child, grade 3 to grade 10. Answer does not come the same day. Answer comes the next day with next day's question. So whole day the child thinks and reads and tries to ponders on the question. And there is no block practice. It is interleaf practice. Today can be fractions, tomorrow can be perimeter. But it's the question itself explains what the children need to do. And I have seen grade 2 children in a complex topics like numbers or large number calculation in grade 3, children doing 700, 800 questions voluntarily without anybody forcing them to do. And it's possible. I am absolutely hopeful that it's possible. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jayanti. So Tapas sir, you have lots of inputs here. Now you got to figure out how to scale it up.
Yes. So I have 2 to 3 points to share.
I'm sure you have your points as well.
Because since last 24 years of my experience in diet and also at SCIT and working in the government schools particularly, that in last, particularly after NCF 2005 and the RT Act, there is a change in the concept of learning and also assessment. Because as a classroom teacher and a practitioner, my focus is always on school-based assessment. Large-scale assessment has impact on the policymakers to take policy decisions, how to change the teacher training program, how to change the, that is required for them, particularly like I.A.S type of study. Once one administrator working with us told that, please give me the block-wise report and school-wise report of I.A.S. I told him that in I.A.S, the district has the lowest unit, so it is not possible on our part to give the block-wise report. But I want school-wise report. This is now the things are changing in the minds of the administrators and other people. But as a classroom practitioner, my focus is always on the school-based assessment, particularly how assessment helps me in learning my students, in learning of my students. Yeah. That you may conduct the class, district-wise surveys, many things you can do, but how to strengthen my classroom work, how to strengthen my system, how to strengthen the learning of my students, that is most important thing. You think one thing, there is a purely paradox. Since last 20 years, we are talking about, particularly after NCF, learning is construction of knowledge or learning is meaning making. The definition of learning has been changed. That the definition of learning, what I have read during my B.Ed and M.Ed period, learning is modification of behavior in the cognitive psychology. Now the things have been changed in the constructivist perspective. Learning is the meaning making. So learning is the construction of the knowledge. If the child is constructing the knowledge by himself or herself, that is learning. So whether our assessment is coincide with that, is going in that direction or not, just making one annual assessment, examination, summative assessment, or I.A.S type of study, or district-specific assessment, that cannot solve the problem and cannot help the teacher to help the teacher to plan his learning, plan his teaching learning processes. So thing is that the assessment and learning, that should go together, and that in Nipun document you can see in all the modern pedagogies, all the innovative pedagogies, that has been highlighted. The second thing is that when we are talking about innovative pedagogies, so as well the innovative assessment should go on, not the traditional assessment. Traditional assessment means giving a question, tick mark karo. This is the traditional assessment system. So solve kar lo, hal kar lo, ye problem hai, unko solve kar lo. So when we are talking about innovative pedagogy, how we can contradict with a traditional assessment system? Or putting the traditional old type of questions. So for innovative pedagogy, innovative assessment practices can go. So if you can see, I can say two things, 2 to 3 things. In my diet and in some other diets in our state, when we are talking about the continuous and comprehensive evaluation as per the section 29 of the RT Act, it is mandatory on the part of the teacher to conduct continuous assessment, otherwise the teacher is violating the child right. So continuous assessment means continuous. If there is a flow, there is a break of flow for a fraction of a second, that is not continuous. If the current is flowing in a wire, if there is a small gap of very small, then the current flow is disrupted. So continuous means every second, every fraction of second, we have to assess the child and collecting the evidence. On that evidence, I can help my child. And that is assessment as learning. So what is assessment as learning? This is my personal perspective. So learning is going on in the class, and separately we are doing an assessment. So when in the practice teaching of the B.Ed and D.L.Ed students, what you will see, there is a lesson plan of 45 minutes. So introduction, presentation, and then evaluation. So if the introduction goes for 5 to 10 minutes, presentation of the content is given to 20 to 30 minutes, and last part is 5 minutes for assessment. Assessment, no, that is evaluation in the traditional lesson plan. So that is not a continuous one. We are telling about continuous assessment to the teachers, to our pre-service students, and also in the in-service training programs. But the practice is not continuous. So that's why in my diet and also when I am preparing the lesson plan for my student teachers, I am advising the students, if this is an warm-up activity, you can start in the introduction stage. So from that activity, how you will assess? If you are doing a teaching activity, learning activity, so in that learning activity, you have to assess. So what are your assessment points? This is the activity you have to write down. For an example, my activity is on play. I am doing in my class teaching a place value. This is a simple play, common play in our state. So you can take the sticks of 3 different length sticks, particularly the coconut, from the coconut leaves you can take. So there will be a circle, and you can put all the sticks here, 8 to 9 sticks. You may take 10 sticks. So the sticks will not go out of the boundary of the circle. If the sticks will go out of the boundary of the circle, then you are disqualified. So you have to very careful and keep all the sticks within that circle, and then you have to pick one by one so that other sticks will not be disturbed. If other sticks will be disturbed, then you are out. Then it will come to the other person. So I conducted this game with my students. So there are 3 different lengths of stick. The सबसे बड़ा stick का value है 100, the बीच वाला stick का value है 10, and the small जो stick है उनका value है 1. So you have to pick up and you have to calculate who is the winner of your class. So this is the activity is going on. This is a learning activity to teach the place value concept, and or you may say expanding the number. Expanding the number 342, 300 plus 40 plus 2. So how many big sticks you have taken? 3. So 300. How many middle type of sticks you have taken? 2 to 20. And how many small sticks you have taken? 1. This is 1. So every child will participate and they will tell, my number is 342. My number is 207. My number is 120. They can say. So during, this is the learning activity. So what is the, my focus is continuous assessment kya hai? What is continuous assessment? Or what assessment as learning? When there is no difference between assessment and learning. Every assessment activity is a learning activity, and every learning activity is an assessment activity. So from that activity, the children are learning, but I am assessing. Other children are assessing one child, whether he is telling the correct one or not. So this is known as the continuous assessment in my term, and the assessment as learning, which will help the teacher to find out the indicators whether the children are learning or not. So this type of things can help in the particularly school-based activity, where assessment and learning, that will go together. That will not separate. There is not a separate period for assessment. There is not a special slot for assessment at the end of the year or at the end of the month or after 3 years, the last study. Those are helpful. Those are good. The scores are good because those are important, particularly for the policy makers. But for the classroom teachers, this score has no value at all. As a classroom teacher, my focus is to collect evidence whether my children are learning or not. If my children are not learning, where they are doing the mistake, I have to take the evidence, I have to record that, and accordingly I have to help. Another example I am giving in my class. So that was a class in class 4 or 5, class 6. I was taking a class in in science, that is in a practicing school very close to my diet. And ये सब बोलते हैं तो urban area में the students are basically in government schools, the students are from the slum areas. nor the good people they going to the private schools like different type of English medium schools and Saraswati Vidya Mandir, other schools. And particularly the socio-economic poor group ka bacche jo they normally come to the government schools. So I invited 20, when my students told me, sir, in which class you will give your demonstration lesson in mathematics? I told that any class you like, but you have to tell me the day before of the demonstration class. So they, sir, tomorrow we will pick up the class 6 students. Yes, pick up. So I selected a topic that is the integer. Introduction to integer in class 6. So I started an activity that I draw a picture on the board and just give, this is the picture and this is the sea level. I asked what is this? No, this is a water level. So Pranav think this is a sea. And I asked them to take up a drawing sheet and draw like this. This is the piece of the paper and beach mein kya hota hai? This is the water level. So and I asked the children in 4-5 different groups, in each group 4 children, to prepare small, out of the drawing sheet, prepare small bars, pieces, and crunch, everything. One aeroplane, one sun, one moon, one car, one boat. Just they cut the drawing sheets and prepare the things. And I asked them where you will keep these things in this picture. Just paste with the help of the gum. And every group, they have pasted correctly. Where will be the sun? The sun will be here. Where will be the bird will be here, below the sun. मैं बोला बाढ़ ऊपर नहीं जा सकता, नहीं सन के ऊपर कैसे जा सकता है? And most of all are from the economic background children, poor economic background children. And I asked them, you have to tell like this. ये तो पानी का जो पत्तन है, जो सी लेवल का ऊपर है और नीचे है. ये you have to make a sentence. In each sentence, the word sea level will be there. This is the condition. So they told the fish is below the sea level, the boat is on the sea level, the sun is above the sea level, the bird is above the sea level but below the sun. All the students, you can't imagine, all the students, they told in this language. If there are problem in some students, other peers, they help them and I also help them. But at the end of the class, this is the part of a class. At the end of the class, they told that they prepared sentences where in each sentence there is the word sea level is there. And that is my focus because I have to start with 0 and above 0 the positive numbers and below 0 the negative numbers. Then I took them to the field outside the class and I prepared some circles, equal distance, एक ही line में. And I asked them to work as a robot. One robot, one child will give instruction and the robots will work. So, and this is if these are the circles, the beach wala circle को मैंने एक cross mark कर दिया है. This is your home. This is your home. You have to go
above or below.
Above or below. So then and for fun and for merrymaking and for amusement, for joy, and I asked them to go by just like a robot. This is just only for fun. And the leader when asked, robot, go forward to 2 घर आगे जाना है. So they just go. 4 घर पीछे आना है. So now where you are? ना मैं मेरे अपने घर से 2 घर पीछे है. So these 2 activities I have done in one class. So from that, I don't give him the idea of negative numbers, but I gave him the idea is -2, 2 घर पीछे, 2 घर आगे. This is an opposite situation. So +2 is the opposite situation of -2. -2 is the opposite situation of +2. This idea and all the 22 children you cannot imagine. At class 6, you may say learning gaps are there, हो गया, COVID हो गया, ये हो गया, learning gaps हो गया. But if you will really apply the child-centered pedagogy in your class, where they will construct the knowledge, ये learning gap ये कुछ की मतलब नहीं है. जब तक हम टीचर सेंट्रिक का बात करेंगे, ये learning gap ऐसे 50 साल तक रहेगा. ये कोविड तो छोड़ दीजिए, ये कोविड में एवरी स्टेट इज डूइंग लर्निंग एनहांसमेंट प्रोग्राम, क्या क्या प्रोग्राम कर रहे हैं, सब स्टेट कर रहा है. सो पिछले आफ्टर 2 years यू विल गो टू स्कूल, वेदर देयर विल बी नो लर्निंग गैप, सेम थिंग विल हैपन. बट वन थिंग, इफ यू विल अडॉप्ट द चाइल्ड सेंट्रिक पेडागोजी इन योर क्लास, गिव रेस्पेक्ट द वॉइसेस ऑफ द चिल्ड्रन, see what they are doing, give them the activities, but they will do the activities, then at that time, the school-based assessment that can be held, and the teacher will collect evidence, and on the basis of the evidence, the teacher can identify where the problem is with the child, lies with the child, and then he can give the feedback based on the evidence. Evidence means not the scores. Evidence means from classroom behaviors. Why he is doing? If after activity a child is saying, he has problem in saying,
Yeah.
I have identified, yes, he has not understood. Again, I will give a similar type of task or an alternative learning experience which can help the child to learn that concept. So in my opinion, for school-based assessment, the score has no meaning at all. But for the large-scale assessment, the score has a meaning for the teacher, for the BO, for the DO, for the department secretary, for the SPD. That has a meaning for policy making. But as a teacher, I have only to assess my child during his learning, and that is enough. Thank you.
So, lots of different opinions and inputs into this. So, we can't come to a conclusion because I know these people are behind me here. But do anyone from the audience wants to add more confusion into the mix? Yeah, anyone?
Just one thought that has been bothering for a number of years.
Because what we are going to do is, I am going to at least personally watch the video of this and make notes on this.
Yes,
and put it to good use. So,
yeah, exactly. So one thing that has been bothering me with assessments, not that we were doing it, but just to understand our own program impact is, for the first few years, we've been doing baseline and the usual stuff. But in this process, one thing I came across was that the effort that the child is putting in was not being measured in any of these systems. So somewhere, as any work has been done towards measuring these efforts, it could be as simple as coming to school regularly, taking part in the classroom transactions, all these things. So, because unless that is done, I think just looking at the end point is something that,
Yeah, but that's what Vyjayanthi talked about a little bit.
Is there any
social,
emotional
and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, so definitely most of the assessments, I think even I.A.S is supposed to do that. I don't know whether it's out there in the public domain or not. But all the demographic variables, the process variables, etc. So for example, whether the child is in class 5 or class 7, if he's reading for 4 hours or 3 hours, whether he's doing homework for X number of hours, all of these variables, plus the interest, as I said, their beliefs, self-beliefs, all of this when you collect it, and then you run regressions and other things, you would actually know whether these are impacting it or not. So these are generally done. I think the fundamental misconception I see to some extent in this room, which I want to share about assessment, is that I'll share a story so that it stays with you. So my daughter, when she was in grade 10, one day she called me to in my office and she was crying. I asked her what happened. And I'm from Tamil Nadu, so I don't know Hindi. Tamilians are not expected to know Hindi. So it was, right? So, and anyway, I have never studied with my child. Even from LKG, I have never done even one day homework with my child. Because I believe that it's a child's responsibility to learn. My responsibility is to create the environment and send to school. So I'll just check whether has she done her homework, and then if not, I'll say it's okay, Amma has to still go to office, you will go to school. 3 days she goes and faces the music, 4th day she will do her homework herself. So that's the belief, and that's how I brought up my kid. So grade 10, so she is calling and crying, and I asked her what happened. She said that my Hindi teacher called me to the staff room, and she, read me a riot act saying that if Akriti in section B can score 24 out of 25, why is it that you scored 23 out of 25? I think the teachers were competing for some board rank. So I said, okay, so why are you crying? She said, the teacher also said, you can do better. Okay? I said that, teacher is believing you, so she likes you, so why are you crying? I mean, she thinks that you have potential. Even you don't understand. Okay? So I said, what is it that I don't understand? She said, Amma, listen, first time I studied whatever I know and whichever way I know, and I got 23 out of 25. Next time, she's saying I can do better, but I will still study the same way, put in the same thing. I don't know whether I'll get 24 or 25 or 20 or 18, right? So I realized, and way back in my early days of my career, I taught in schools for some time, and I used to believe, I taught, of course, the 11th and 12th grades, and I used to think that children have to be motivated, and I used to write, can do better. Okay? I realized that day, acha, this can do better is such a useless statement. Right? So can do better, cannot do better, make anybody, I thought it was a motivational thing, but it actually was demotivating also, because if you don't tell them how to do better, they cannot really do better.
True.
Right? So when you therefore build assessment, most of the time assessments in this country has been used only to pass or fail the child, or to rank, or to say you are promoted or you are selected or you are not, right? But the main purpose of assessment is to give feedback. I would say it's like preparing a cup of tea. So if I give you a recipe for giving a cup of tea, and I say this is how you will make, and then I say that you make the tea and come back, I don't say you're 99th percentile, you're A grade or something like that. I would say it should have less milk, it should be more hot, it should have less sugar, whatever it is, right? So a well-built assessment, even I.A.S is supposed to do it, whether they do it or not, I don't know. If I.A.S is now getting, all districts are tested, definitely data is there, block level reports can be generated, school level reports can be generated, classroom level reports can be generated, child level reports can be generated. But what we generally do is that when we prepare assessments, we focus on one thing. Every question, wrong answer is sacrosanct. What are all the wrong answers? And you will find that those wrong answers are the wrong answers children will end up doing. This comes from research. Many times you will find that when questions are made, you will solve, and then if it's a multiple choice question, the answer you got is not there in the option at all. Then you will choose some closer number, right? But in reality, if it's a well-built assessment, every option that is going to be there will be based on research. You will actually know that these are the mistakes that child makes, and this is because he's making a process error or he's having a misconception. Those types of things. And if this information is available to the teacher, again, as a teacher, I think back, just one extra point I would say. If suppose the principal calls you to the staff room and say, I don't know what you will do, you go and improve the scores of your children. Okay? I am a good teacher. First time only I have taught well. Now I am asked to improve the scores further. What will I do? I will go, maybe give them more homework, maybe call them for an extra class, maybe teach the topic all over again. But it's a brute force approach. I still do not know at the end of it whether the scores of my class will go up or come down, right? But if as a teacher, I am told, see, in your class, your children are doing fractions well, but most of them seem to think that fraction means parts, but they don't seem to know that parts have to be equal. If I am given that type of feedback, I as a teacher, I can correct it like that, right? So any assessment you build, whether it is for the policy purpose or the school-based assessment or the classroom assessment, the way you design the question is the most important thing. Second is that how granular is your data? How are you analyzing the data? And is the feedback flowing back to the teacher and the learner? If these things are taken care of, then assessments will help. Otherwise, assessments, as most people believe, is only for marks or for ranking,
Yes. And
it will have very limited purpose.
Okay, I think, yeah, just comments and no answers to be expected back from the panel. No, because everyone's got a 4 o'clock deadline.
Hi. So the question is not on assessment directly, but prerequisite for assessment. This is a concern also, and thoughts on you will be appreciated. Assessment naturally happen when there is a trust in the teacher and students, trust between teacher and students. Instead of focusing on building trustable environment, why are we focusing on designing assessment? Let's say there is no trust between students and a teacher, that students do not feel that the teacher is credible enough to assess me. Then what is the point of designing a comprehensive assessment? Let's say we do not assess a procedural knowledge. Let's say we assess a higher order thinking skills. Let's say I do not trust you at all. Means I don't have good rapport with the teacher or the system. So what's the point in designing a comprehensive assessment? So who are we to test their knowledge? And only if there is enough trust, there is scope for assessment. So even if it's I.A.S or school-based assessment, when there's a natural rapport between the teacher and student, naturally assessment is how learning is happening all the time. Assessment is also happening all the time because there is a constant relationship dynamics which is happening. So the concern, and also when I go for teachers training, and I was just reflecting on why even after 2005 position paper they deliberately said that higher order thinking skills need to be assessed. Still, even after 17 years, still there is a question paper based on procedural knowledge. So, so what's the root cause? Really, I don't understand. This is one of the root cause, which is a trust. I don't know other root causes, why it is still the same problem. Why are we not even focusing on trust is something at a scale which we cannot do it. At least in a school-based assessment, building rapport should be the prime focus, right? So why there is no deliberations? I don't know if there are deliberations provisions, it's okay, but I have not heard of building relationship before assessment. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much.
Just share one of my experience that always in my feeling assessment, particularly the classroom assessment, should be a pleasurable experience for the child, and there the trust comes, whether the children are accepting the teacher, and when the students they accept the teacher, they will accept every activity of the teacher. That may be assessment, that may be classroom teaching, anything. One of my friend, he's a primary school teacher, he told me, you are talking about corporate punishment, please come to my school and I will bite my children seriously, and when you will ask the children whether the teacher is beating you, they will say no, our teacher is an excellent teacher. That is the relationship between the teacher. And because after the school is over, I played football with them, I played in the Gildanda with them. Every game I played with them. So they know that I am one of his friends. And sometimes if I bite them, there will be they will tell that our sir is the best. He never beat us. Yeah. This is the question of trust. This is the for an example. Once in a class 6, I told children tomorrow we will learn test. Tomorrow sir we will read this, बहुत सारे पढ़ा हुआ है, हम कैसे पढ़ेंगे, 3 दिन का बात करेंगे. So after 3 days we will do the test. Yes. So उनको हाथ में 3 दिन मिल गया. They got 3 days gap for preparation. So after 3 days I was in diet, and when I went to that school, when they saw me, test will happen today. They are looking each other, test will happen today. I told that today the test will happen, but that was an open book examination. Oh, open book examination, हम किताब दिख कर लिखेंगे? Yes. So शुरू हो गया. मैं उनको बोला जो चाहे किताब ले आओ, दिख कर लिखो. So kitab means the test papers, the test books, the notebooks, everything. They have collected different type of test papers, reference materials available in the market. And I told them, you can sit with any student, any of your friends. You can take as much time as you take. You can discuss with any person except me. You can discuss with any child, any friend of your class. You can take as much time as you like, but you have to give the answer only in 100 words. 100 words? No, you have to give an answer in 100 words, only in 1 page. So then what they told, I just gave him a question, compare the ruling pattern of Akbar and Aurangzeb. That is not directly in the textbook. किताब में नहीं है. ये तो औरंगजेब का अलग है, तो अकबर का अलग है. So पढ़ने दीजिए उनको. So that is assessment. I am assessing, but they are learning. At that time, the assessment event works as a learning event for them, and for me, that is an assessment event. Then I collected the papers, and I told, now open the book. What will be the answer? Told me. So this is the first point. This is the second point. If you write this one, you will get 1 mark. If you write this one, then you will get 1 mark. If you write this, then you will get 1 mark. So 5 marks हो गया. ये लिखने से 1 mark, ये लिखने से 1 mark, 5 mark हो गया. So now you evaluate your own paper. हो गया. कितने मार्क हुआ? 2. सर क्यों तो 2 हुआ? सर मैंने ये नहीं लिखा, ये नहीं लिखा, ये नहीं लिखा. I have not written this, I have not written this, I have not written this. I have only written 2 things. I will get 0, one child say. So now you can write again that question so that you will get at least 4 out of 5. This is the assessment. And this is the trust. This is the trust. If we will design our assessment, particularly classroom assessments in such situation where there is a trust, the children will trust the teacher and the teacher will trust the children, that the children can learn. As a teacher, I have a trust on my children. Each of my child, every child of my class will learn, and the children have a trust that our teacher will not scold me, our teacher will help from this test, our teacher will help us. Then again they ask, sir, दूसरा assessment कब, दूसरा test कब होगा? This is the trust.
Okay.
This is my experience.
So thank you. So we had a good session. We'll collate all this stuff and share with everybody.